sky and the power of every storm that has ever been. I am infinite.
It's Cass, and welcome to another one of my beginner-friendly crochet tutorials. Before we get into it, I just want to say a huge thank you to my boyfriend Mark for directing, filming, and editing the intro to this tutorial. There is no one I trust more with my ideas than him. He is an insanely talented filmmaker. I linked his YouTube channel down below in the description so you can check out his channel, watch some of his videos, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, just anything to show your support. I also want to say a huge thank you to Rebecca Yarros, the author of Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and Onyx Storm, for creating such incredible fictional characters and this fantasy world that truly brought my imagination to a whole nother level. The Empyrean series was a huge inspiration for this design. I really hope I captured Violet's dragon scale armor in this Sorrengail top. Speaking of which, before you start crocheting your Sorrengail top, there are 3 things you need to know. The first thing is, if you would like a custom Sorrengail top, you can place your order on my website. The link is down below. The second thing you need to know is the written pattern for this design is also linked down below in the description. It comes with the measurement guides and calculations, stitch diagrams, and overall super in-depth instructions. And the third thing you need to know is if beginner-friendly crochet tutorials are something you're interested in, I highly recommend you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future tutorials. Okay, without further ado, let's learn how to make this top. For supplies, you're going to need a silky, lightweight textured yarn. I'm using a rayon yarn made of silk and seaweed, but a more affordable option I'd recommend is this loops and thread silky soft rayon from bamboo yarn. You're also going to need a 4mm hook, stitch markers, I'm just using bobby pins, a measuring tape, scissors, a tapestry needle, and a pen and paper. Before we begin, use your measuring tape to take these 4 measurements. The measurement calculations are found in the written pattern linked down below in the description. Start by creating a slip knot. Create a foundation double crochet that is the length of measurement A. To create a foundation double crochet, yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook. That's 1. Yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook. That's 2. Yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook. That's 3. Now we're going to crochet into the first chain we made. We're going to yarn over, stick our hook through that first chain. Now you'll notice how we have 1, 2, 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and only pull through that first loop. Now we have 1, 2, 3 loops on our hook again. We're going to yarn over, but this time pull through the first 2 loops. Now we have 2 loops on our hook. Lastly, we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops that are left on our hook. If we flip the orientation of what we just did, you'll see how we have a new stitch here on the side. We're going to repeat those same steps, but into this new stitch. Yarn over, going into that new stitch, we have 3 loops on our hook, 1, 2, 3. We're going to yarn over, pull through the first loop on our hook. We have 3 loops on our hook again. Yarn over, pull through the first 2. And lastly, yarn over and pull through the last 2. And again, if we flip over our orientation, we see how we have a new stitch we created. So this was the first one, and this is the one we just did. Now we're going to repeat those same steps into the new stitch we just created. Again, yarn over, into the new stitch we just made. Again, we have 3 loops on our hook, 1, 2, 3. Yarn over, pulling through the first one only. We have 3 loops on our hook again. Yarn over, pull through the first 2. And lastly, pull through the last 2. We're going to continue this pattern until we have a foundation chain that is the length of measurement A. While measuring your foundation chain, don't stretch it, just lie it down flat and straight. Before we continue, count how many double crochets you made in your foundation chain and write it down. To determine how many double crochets you made, flip over your foundation chain so you can see the V's. Each V is 1 double crochet. So count all of them and write it down. Now we're going to chain 3. So to do that, yarn over, pull through, that's 1, yarn over, pull through, that's 2, yarn over, pull through, that's 3, and we're going to turn over our work. Now we're going to skip the 3 chains we made. So we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, and we're going to make 2 double crochets into this 4th stitch. To do that, yarn over, hook through the stitch, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops. Now we're going to repeat that one more time into the same stitch. So yarn over, hook through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. What we just did was we created 1 cluster. So a cluster is 3 double crochets. The first chain 3 we made counted as our first double crochet. Now what we're going to do is chain 1, and we're going to skip 2 stitches. So we're going to skip 1, 2, and we're going to make a cluster into the 3rd stitch. So we're going to make 3 double crochets into this 3rd stitch. And once we're done the 3 double crochets, we're going to chain 1. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches again, so skipping 1, 2, crocheting into this 3rd stitch, and we're going to make a cluster. Once you're done the cluster, chain 1, and we're going to continue making clusters into every 3rd stitch all the way until the end of the row. I'm at my last cluster. So once I complete it, instead of chaining 1, I'm going to chain 3. This chain 3 is going to be considered 1 double crochet, and we're doing this to keep a nice flat and straight edge at the top of our top. Once you complete the chain 3, turn over your work. Because that chain 3 counted as 1 double crochet, we're just going to chain 1. This chain 1 is going to help us create a nice gap between the double crochet and the next cluster we're about to create. So we're going to create 1 cluster into this large gap between these 2 clusters from the previous row. So make 3 double crochets into this gap. And once you complete the cluster, we're going to chain 1. Again, we're going to repeat this step into this next space. So creating 1 cluster, and chain 1. Continue making clusters into each large gap until you have 1 large gap left. So leave this last large gap empty. I finished my last cluster and I left the last large gap empty. Now instead of chaining 1, I'm going to chain 3. So yarn over, hook through, that's 1, yarn over, hook through, that's 2, yarn over, hook through, that's 3, and I'm going to turn over my work. Because this chain 3 is considered 1 double crochet, I'm going to chain 1 and start making my cluster into this first large gap. So create 3 double crochets into the first large gap you see. And once you complete it, chain 1. Again, making a cluster into the next large gap. And chain 1 once it's completed. As you can see, we've started the decrease, which is going to create the asymmetric look of the top. Continue making clusters into each large gap until you reach the end of the row. I'm approaching the end of the row, so I'm going to complete my last cluster in the last large gap. And once my last cluster is complete, I'm going to chain 3 instead of chain 1. And turn over my work. Now you're going to repeat rows 2 and 3 until your panel is the width of measurement B. When you're measuring your panel, make sure to stretch it. For your better understanding, I'll show you which large gap to leave empty at the end of row 4. It is the one between your 3 turning chains of the previous row and your first cluster. I'm just about to create my last cluster into the second last large gap. Once I complete my cluster, I'm going to decrease by leaving this last gap empty and chaining 3. Then I'm going to turn my work. Once you complete your last cluster for your last row, you're going to chain 1 instead of chaining 3. Mark your last chain with a stitch marker. When measuring the width of your panel, make sure to stretch it. I recommend that your last row end where the top straight edge is. If your last row ended on the asymmetric side, I recommend that you remove 1 row just so that your top has a tighter fit. It's better to do that than to add an extra row and have your top be more loose fitted. Now what you're gonna do is create a second panel that is exactly the same as this one. You're going to refer back to the number of double crochets you wrote down, just so your second panel is the exact same length as your first one, and your second panel is also going to have the exact same amount of rows as your first panel. I recommend you start your second panel with a new skein of yarn. I want to keep this yarn connected to my project, so when I finish the second panel, I'm able to try on the top to make sure it's the size I want it to be. And if I need to remove a row or add a row, it's really easy to do that if each panel is connected to its own individual skein of yarn. So I'll meet you again once you finish completing your second panel. Once your 2 panels are completed, you're going to grab some stitch markers and you're going to place 1 panel on top of the other one. Make sure to line them up nicely and have them be laying down flat. We're going to use our stitch markers to mark together the long side. This doesn't have to be perfect. The goal here is to connect this side enough so that when we try on our top, we're able to determine whether or not we will need to add another row to the short side of the top. Once you've completed marking the long side of your top, you're going to take it and we're going to try it on. You want your top to feel tight, but not tight to the point where it's hurting you. Once you feel satisfied with the fit of your top, we're gonna go ahead and prepare to sew the side seams together. At the end of your panel, you should have 1 chain after your final cluster. You're going to grab a pair of scissors, leave a tail of yarn, cut your yarn, and pull your yarn through the last chain 1. Give it a tug, and now your panel is secure and ready to be sewn at the side. Once the ends of both panels are secure, you're going to remove the stitch markers you placed at the long edge of your top. Now we're going to sew our edges together, and we're going to do that by using a tapestry needle. Grab your yarn and cut a piece that is just over double the length of the side of your top. Thread your tapestry needle with the yarn and leave a few inches of a tail on one side. Make sure the edges of your two panels are lined up perfectly, and make sure they're lying down completely flat. To start sewing our sides together, we're going to find the first stitch on the left side and stick our tapestry needle through it. We're going to pull our yarn through, but we're gonna leave a small tail at the end. Now we're going to go through again, but this time we're going to leave a loop. We're going to stick our tapestry needle through this loop and pull through and tighten. This is going to secure the end of our yarn. Now from the inside, we're going to find the first stitch on the right side and stick our tapestry needle through it and pull through. Now finding our next stitch on the left side, we're going to stick our tapestry needle through it, pull through. Finding our next stitch on the right side, sticking our tapestry needle through it, pull through, and we're going to continue going back and forth all the way until the end of our row. Once you sew through your final stitch, you're going to go through that same last stitch, and just like we did at the beginning, we're going to leave a loop, and we're going to stick our tapestry needle through that loop and pull our yarn through, and now the end of our seam is secure. We will weave in all of these ends at the end of our project. Repeat this sewing step onto the short side of your panels. Once your two edges are sewn together, you're going to count how many rows you have on your panel, divide it by 2, and mark the middle. For example, I have 30 rows, so half of 30 is 15, so I'm gonna count 15 rows. And I'm going to mark the 15th row. This is going to be my middle point. So I'm gonna repeat this step on the other side of my top. Grabbing a stitch marker and marking that middle point. Now you're going to try on your top. When you're trying on your top, make sure your stitch marker is in the middle for both the front and the back. Now I'm going to determine where I want my sleeve to start, and I'm going to mark it with a stitch marker. I'm going to count how many rows are between my middle point and the start of my sleeve, and repeat that on the other side to make sure everything is symmetrical. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm gonna mark that 7th row with a stitch marker. Now I'm gonna take off my top and make the same markings on the back of the top. So finding that middle point on the back of my top, I'm going to count the same number of rows. So in my case, it was 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, marking that with a stitch marker and repeating that same step on the other side of the middle point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we're going to start crocheting our sleeves. To create our sleeves, we're going to start by creating a slip knot. Placing our slip knot aside, we're going to go to the stitch marker that's marking the beginning of our sleeve, and we're going to stick our hook through that stitch. You can remove your stitch marker. Now we're going to grab our slip knot and we're going to pull it through the stitch. Now we're going to chain the length of measurement C. To do this, yarn over and pull through. Yarn over, pull through. Count how many chains you're making so you can replicate the same number of chains when creating your second sleeve. When measuring your chain, lie it down flat, don't stretch it. To connect our sleeve to the other side of our top, we're going to find the stitch marker on the back of our top, marking the start of our sleeve, and we're going to stick our hook through the marked stitch. You can remove your stitch marker. Now we're going to yarn over, pull our hook through, and we're going to pull it through the other loop on our hook. This is our first slip stitch, so we're going to create 2 more slip stitches in the round. Find spaces in the round where you can place 2 strands of yarn on your hook. What I mean by that is if you go through one of the stitches and you only have 1 strand of yarn on your hook, it's not going to support the pulling of your sleeve enough, so try to find a second strand of yarn that you can put your hook through. So now I have 1, 2, 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all of them. So that's my second slip stitch. And now I'm going to find another 2 strands of yarn in the next gap that I see. So that's 1 strand of yarn. That's 2 strands of yarn. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all the loops on my hook. Now turn over your work. Now we're going to skip 5 chains. So we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 6th chain, but I want to go through the 3rd loop. So all I have to do, if you see how this is my V, I need to flip it upside down and I'm gonna see this semicircle poking out. This is the 3rd loop and I'm going to make 1 cluster into this 3rd loop. So yarn over and making 3 double crochets into the 3rd loop of the 6th chain. And once I complete my cluster, just like we did previously, I'm going to chain 1. Now I'm going to skip 2 chains. So 1, 2, this is the 3rd chain, and I'm going to make a cluster into that 3rd loop. And after I'm done my cluster, I'm going to chain 1, and again skipping 2 stitches, 1, 2, and going into the 3rd loop of the 3rd stitch. I'm going to continue making clusters into every 3rd loop of every 3rd stitch until I reach the end of the row. Once I've completed the last cluster and chain 1, I'm going to make 3 slip stitches into the round. So again, picking up 2 strands of yarn, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through all the loops on my hook. That's 1 slip stitch, finding the next gap, pulling through all the loops on my hook, and making 1 third and final slip stitch. Now that I've made 3 slip stitches in the round, I'm going to turn over my work. So these are the 3 slip stitches I made into the round. Now what I'm going to do is complete the cluster in this first gap. So these 3 slip stitches counted as 1 double crochet. So I'm going to make 2 more double crochets into this initial large gap. After my cluster, I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to make a cluster into this next large gap. And again, after the cluster, I'm going to chain 1 and find the next large gap, make a cluster, and chain 1. I'm going to continue making clusters into each large gap until I reach the end of the row. So after my last chain 1, just like we did earlier, I'm going to slip stitch 3 times into the round. So picking up at least 2 strands of yarn, yarn over, pulling through all the loops on my hook. That's 1. Yarn over, pulling through all the loops on my hook. That's 2. Yarn over and pulling through all the loops on my hook. That's 3. And I'm going to turn over my work. Repeat row 2 until you have a total of 6 rows. At the end of row 6, only make 1 slip stitch into the round before turning over. I'm just completing my last cluster of row 6. And following the cluster, I'm going to chain 1. And now instead of making 3 slip stitches into the round, I'm only going to make 1 slip stitch. So I'm going to find a gap, get 2 strands of yarn over my hook, yarn over, and pull through all the loops on my hook. Now I'm going to turn over my work. To start row 7, we're going to slip stitch through the first large gap and the first cluster. To do this, we're just going to put our hook through the first gap, yarn over, and pull through the loops on our hook. Finding the V's at the top of our cluster, we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through. Again, finding the next V on the second double crochet of the cluster, yarn over, pull through, and finding that last V at the top of the third double crochet of the cluster, and pull through. Now we're going to create our first cluster of row 7 into the second large gap of the row. Once you complete the cluster, you're going to chain 1 and make a cluster into the next large gap. And then chain 1. You're going to continue making clusters into each large gap until you have 1 large gap left. So you're going to stop crocheting at the second last large gap, and you're going to leave the very last gap of the row empty. I've reached the second last large gap, so I'm going to complete my cluster through it. Then I'm going to chain 1 and turn over my work. Now we're going to slip stitch through the first cluster, the first large gap, and the second cluster. So finding the first V of our first double crochet, we're going to stick our hook through it, yarn over, and pull through. And we're going to repeat this through all of the stitches. Now into the first large gap, and now into the second cluster. These are the completed slip stitches. Now I'm going to make a cluster into the second large gap of the row. And once that's completed, I'm going to chain 1 and continue making clusters into each large gap. Leave the last large gap empty. Your last cluster is going to be in the second last large gap. I'm at the second last large gap of the row, so I'm going to complete my last cluster and chain 1. Then I'm going to turn my work. You're going to continue repeating row 8 until you have a final row that only has 2 clusters. I'll meet you again at the last row. I'm at my last row where I only have 2 clusters left. So what I'm going to do is slip stitch through the first cluster, and once that's complete, I'm going to make 1 cluster into the large gap. After this last cluster though, instead of chaining 1, we're going to make 2 slip stitches into the 3rd double crochet of the cluster. So again, we're going to find a gap and pick up 2 strands of yarn, yarn over, pull through all the loops on your hook, and then finding another gap in that same double crochet, picking up 2 strands of yarn, yarn over, and pulling through all the loops on our hook. And once that's complete, we're going to slip stitch through the last cluster of our row. And once you complete your last slip stitch, we're going to chain 1, grab your scissors, and we're going to leave a tail of yarn and use your hook to pull the yarn through, give it a tug, and now your sleeve is complete. Repeat the same sleeve process on the other side of your body panel to create the second sleeve. Now that your 2 sleeves are completed, we're going to choose which side of our top we want to be the front. Once you've picked which side you want to be the front, you can remove the middle mark stitch marker on the back panel of your top. Grab your measuring tape, line it up with your stitch marker, and measure measurement D. Mark that point with a stitch marker. Cut a strand of yarn that is just over double the length of measurement D. Grab your tapestry needle and thread it with your yarn. Now you're going to weave your tapestry needle through every other stitch between your middle mark and measurement D. Once you reach your stitch marker marking measurement D, you're going to pull your tapestry needle through all the way, but make sure to leave a tail of yarn at the top of your top. Turn over your work. Now we're going to go back through the same row, but make sure not to go right through that last stitch or else your yarn will have nothing to hook onto. So start going through the second loop of yarn. And once you reach the top of your top, you're going to pull your tapestry needle through all the way. You should have 2 strands of yarn at the top of your top. Grab the 2 strands of yarn and you're going to push down. This is going to create the cinch. To secure the cinch, we are going to tie 2 basic knots. Pull them as tight as you can. To create your tie straps, you're going to lie your top down flat with the back side facing up. Mark the second large gap from the top of each sleeve. So this is the first gap and this is the second gap, and I did the same thing on the other side. Grab your yarn and create a slip knot. Place your slip knot to the side. Grab your sleeve and stick your hook through the large gap that is marked with your stitch marker. Grab your slip knot, pull it through the large gap, and chain 100. Once you complete your 100 chains, you're going to make 1 turning chain. So yarn over and hook through. Now we're going to flip our yarn over to expose the 3rd loop. So finding the first 3rd loop at the top of your chain, we are going to slip stitch through it. So stick your hook through the 3rd loop, yarn over, and pull through all the loops on your hook. Now we're going to find the next 3rd loop, hook through, yarn over, and pull through all the loops on your hook. Finding the next 3rd loop, hook through, yarn over, pull through all the loops on your hook. And you're going to continue making slip stitches into the third loop for the entire row. Once you complete all of your slip stitches to the end of the row, you're going to make one single crochet into the large gap with the stitch marker. So to do that, stick your hook through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops that are on your hook, and once you complete the 1 single crochet, you're going to chain 1, so yarn over and hook through, grab your scissors and cut your yarn. Pull the yarn through, give it a tug, and your tie strap is complete. Repeat the same tie strap process on the other side. Once both tie straps are completed, weave in your ends. Congratulations! Your Sorrengail top is officially complete. If you enjoyed following this tutorial and creating this design, please leave a like and subscribe. It is the best way to support the work I do for free. If you did end up downloading the written pattern, I'd really appreciate it if you left a review on my website. If you do end up sharing content of you wearing your Sorrengail top or of the creation process of your Sorrengail top, I would love to see it. So please tag me on Instagram and TikTok at Cassandra Paz. I had so much fun spending time with you, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Bye!